Okay, so here it is, the B25, SpeedyBee's newest drone, and this one here is pretty special with a modular camera design usually found on these smaller drones. Now besides that, you have your SpeedyBee logo on here, this time in gold, pretty special, and on the side here it says B25 ELRS. Now the B25 comes in 3 different versions, both as an Express LRS as well as TBS Crossfire, and finally as a plug-and-play version if you want to add your O3 air unit for yourself. Now let's open this up and see what's inside. And the first thing we see here is a quick start guide or a user guide. It's pretty nice in color, which is really nice to put the thought into it. So you might want to hold on to this for future reference in case you want to reflash the flight controller on this drone. Besides that, we have some stickers, really nice actually, quality stickers, and a QR code if you want to go to the website, download the SpeedyBee app, as well as get the manual for this drone. Now besides that, you have some rubber grommets here to secure the O3 air unit, and that's crucial because you don't want any vibration going to the camera. That's going to introduce vibration and maybe jello in your footage. So this is pretty nice, and they include it with the package right here. Besides that, you have some tools, actually 2 tools, a hex and a Phillips screwdriver. It's pretty cool to see this. Most manufacturers don't include the tools in the drone. Besides that, you have the 2 antennas, and it looks like the actually holders for the antenna as well. Now this is very similar to what you see on these smaller drones like the Pavo Pico, and this is going to reduce the weight. There's no real provisions for the standard O3 antenna, and we'll be installing this in our drone today. Besides that, we have some spare hardware on here, some screws and some camera bolts. Really cool. I don't think we need all of them, but you do have this here in case you lose them. Last but not least, we have this SpeedyBee strap on here. Very, very short. I don't know if this is going to be useful for larger batteries. Usually like a 4S battery is usually larger than this, but hey, they do include an extra strap in here, which is nice. All right, so here it is, the B25. And let's put this to the side here. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the B25. And the first thing I noticed here are all these warning straps on the drone. It kind of reminds me of the old iFlight products. Now this is pretty cool because this gives you a little bit of a warning if you're a new pilot and you're not used to setting up a bind and fly drone. Now we have 3 on here. The first one's talking about don't let this drone stay on the ground or stationary for too long. It's going to overheat the VTX. The next one talks about this one here is set to default in the acro mode. And the last one here says that this drone here is rated for 4S batteries, so don't plug a 6S battery in here. So let's remove all these warnings. Now that we have all those stickers off, this drone looks really nice actually, very attractive with this semi-transparent kind of ducts as well as the camera mount. This thing is kind of light as well, so let's weigh this and see how much it weighs overall. Looks like around 130 grams, so not too bad. Now SpeedyBee is saying that this drone here is going to weigh under 250 grams with the battery and the actual VTX. So we'll see how much it weighs once we put that equipment on the drone. Now there's a lot of firsts for SpeedyBee on this drone specifically, and you can tell because this has a little bit different look than your traditional drone. Everything from this battery strap, which is kind of elastic, to this GPS mount in the back, to this clear, transparent, and modular camera mount in the front. So this is kind of the highlight of this drone here, and we'll see if it delivers a smooth image. But overall, this thing here looks really nice. Let's start off with the frame on here. This is a nice frame, looks like a 120 millimeter wheelbase, but it is a carbon fiber type of frame. Actually, I can't tell if it's carbon fiber. Usually they do. Actually it is, I can see the weave and the layers on here. Now mounted to the frame, we have these motors. These are 1404 motors, which is kind of typical of a drone of this size, but these are new for SpeedyBee. This is a 4600 kV motor on here, and they're attached to HQ propellers. These are the, I think, D63s, and these are very similar to what we see in other setups as well. So this is a very standard propeller, but with this new motor here, we'll see if we get more power and more thrust with this setup. I can tell you for right now though, these magnets are pretty strong and pretty stiff. Usually these things spin pretty freely. Now controlling the motors on this drone is a new stack. Well, I say stack because SpeedyBee typically has a mini stack for their drones. They've gone with the all-in-one this time. This is an all-new all-in-one with the F45 processor and a 35 amp ESC in here. Now this is pretty cool. It also has built-in memory in here so you can log your flights. Now earlier I mentioned that the B25 looks pretty attractive with this semi-transparent propeller guard on here. And if you look pretty closely, you can see that it's a smoked color and there's some built-in LED going around this entire drone. Now, SpeedyBee has been making some really nice LEDs of the past, and these things are very bright and customizable, especially if you're using the SpeedyBee app, but you can also control this as well with your actual radio via the Betaflight software. So we'll see how it looks when I power up this drone. Now, earlier we spoke about this elastic battery strap. Looks very unconventional. Hopefully it can keep the battery secured to this mat here. But in the case it doesn't fit, you can actually rotate this strap this way and mount your batteries horizontal. So that's a pretty cool feature by SpeedyBee. Now, speaking about batteries, we have an XT30 already integrated into the frame. Pretty nice and flush, and this is a pretty cool design. Now, the problem with some of these is that if you don't have enough space here between the camera and your XT30 connector, it's kind of difficult to plug your connection into this XT30 connector. But as I said before, you have the option to mount this battery long ways or horizontal. Now, directly behind that, you have a nice little protective case. It's also in a smoked color. And this gives you the option to mount an actual GPS receiver antenna in the back right here. Now, also attached to this GPS housing is two specific features by SpeedyBee, and they've been doing this for a while, but it's very unique. You also have a button right here, and that is a DFU button to go to the flight controller, put it into DFU mode, and then you can flash your flight controller that way, especially since these flight controllers are buried in the center of the drone here. And in the back here, you have a USB-C port to interact with the flight controller as well. Very nice, very clean, and yeah, I like to see this. This is very nice and modern, guys. Now, last but not least, underneath here, we have the actual legs for the actual frame, but also the thing that's missing on this entire drone is the receiver. Like, where the heck is the receiver? There's no wires. As I said, very clean and modern design. And as you can see under here, you have your Express LRS antenna right under here. You have the receiver here as well, and it's really nice. Now, I don't know how this is gonna impact the actual reception, but you have just little pieces of the antenna coming out here as well. Now, I'm gonna put my O3 Air unit in here. Now, this is the actual camera mount for this whole B25. And this is what makes this whole thing so modular. You mount your VTX in the vertical plane right here, and then you put your camera in the front. So if you do want to change this, and I do suspect they might be using something like this similar on their future drones, I hope they do, because it's very smart. If you can just pull this off and put this in another drone, let's say like a B35 or a B20, this would be awesome, guys. And that's the definition of modular. You can just take it off one drone and put it to another. That would be amazing, guys. Now, talking about this camera mount here design, this is the standard one. This is injected molded plastic, and this works pretty fine. This also reduces the weight of the drone, but SpeedyBee does also offer a pro model as here as well, and this one here is like aircraft aluminum, and that's going to increase the durability of this camera mount, as well as aid in cooling of your VTX. All right, so this drone looks really, really nice. I'm going to install my O3 Air unit in here and take this thing for a flight. Okay, so back from our flight test, and the B25 did a pretty decent job, really good actually. So let's jump right into the flight characteristics. Now, this drone here flew really great, guys. No freak out from the flight controller, had great composure, and is confidence inspiring. Now, the weather for the past couple days haven't been ideal. We're talking about winds between 10 and 25 miles an hour. We actually have a hurricane off the coast causing all this weather, so it really wasn't the ideal weather for a drone, much less a Cinewhoop with these ducks on here. But this thing performed very well, and it really didn't freak out. Now, I did some more aggressive maneuvers such as dives and sharp turns, and there was minimal washout throughout those entire maneuvers. So this thing is tuned very, very well. Now, besides that, this motor and prop combination is pretty much ideal for this setup right here. Never wanted to ask or want more thrust, and even recurring from dives or doing some actual power loops, this thing did a pretty good job. So it's actually a really good combination on this drone. Now, having said that, these propellers in here, we've used these propellers before in the past, and this drone here does produce that traditional Cinewhoop whine. So if you're trying to be kind of inconspicuous and not trying to garner any attention, well, this may not be the drone for that. So overall, the B25 did a really good job in its flight characteristics, and that's what you would kind of expect from a well-tuned drone. This would be the perfect tool to follow and film general subjects. Now, that leads us into the visual of the B25, which is arguably the most important point of any Cinewhoop. Now this did a really good job capturing smooth cinematic 4K images and really exceeded my expectations, only because this whole camera setup here is hard mounted to the frame and the actual ducts of the drone. So that would, you would think, introduce some vibration to the image. And that leads me to believe that if you have a well-tuned drone, guys, and really good harmonics, then you can have really good image. And this is a really good example of it. Now, earlier we talked about how this whole camera setup here is kind of modular, and it's held on by 4 screws on here. Very simple, very easy, you can take this off. But this was not the easiest to install the O3 Air unit into this little canopy right here. As you can see, we have these 2 antennas right here, and they're not at the equal length, and that kind of added to the difficulty of installing this whole thing. But once it's in here, it's pretty good, guys. Everything is easy accessible. You have your SD card on top as well as your USB-C. And on the bottom here, you have your little port here for the bind button. So everything is in the right place. And to be honest, guys, I actually kind of like having the SD card and USB-C on the top here. Easy accessible, and I think that's the way it should be. Now, as you saw before, we also have the aircraft aluminum canopy as well, and that will be used to dissipate the heat on here, but that might add some weight to the entire drone. Heck, talking about that, let's just weigh this because I'm interested to see how much this thing here weighs. And now that we have the O3 in here, it's weighing around 168 grams. I will talk about the batteries later. I did fly with 2 batteries. They recommend a 750. I'm using a 650 here, and that's around 248 grams. So sub 250, which is pretty impressive, guys. Now, I did use the Rocksteady for all my flights, which is the internal stabilization of the O3 Air unit, but you could also turn that off and stabilize it in your Gyroflow program if you prefer that. And usually you can get, I guess, better performance using the Gyroflow software, but for my testing, having the Rocksteady does a really good job straight out the box. So having seen this entire module design, I'm curious to see what SpeedyBee does with this whole design right here, because technically they could put this on another drone, maybe a B35, maybe a B20, and that's theoretically possible. Technically, you can just take these 4 screws off, pull this off, plug it into the other drone, and then just secure these 4 screws, and then you're good to go. So overall, the visuals on the B25 was pretty much perfect and flawless, guys. So if you're trying to capture smooth cinematic 4K images, this drone can do it. Okay, let's talk about battery life on the B25. And I flew this drone with a series of batteries between 650 and 850 milliamp hours. Now, the 650 is a little bit smaller than the recommended 750, and I got around 5.5 minutes of flight time doing what this drone was designed to do, which is just smooth cinematic flying. Now, as I upgraded to the 850, it's a little bit heavier, more capacity on here. I got somewhere between 7 and 7.5 minutes. One flight actually got around 8 minutes of flight time. So this is a very efficient drone, and it kind of exceeds what SpeedyBee is saying on their website. Now, granted, these are kind of healthy batteries. Now, in subsequent flights, I did do some more aggressive flying, and the battery life did reduce by around a minute in both applications. So using the 850 milliamp hour battery, instead of getting 7 minutes, I did average around 6 minutes. And instead of 5 minutes, I did average around 4 to 4.5 minutes on the smaller battery. Now, talking about battery size, there's 2 things to know about the B25. First thing here is this elastic battery strap. Now, surprisingly, this thing is pretty good. It looks kind of weird having this little strap on here, but it does a really good job securing the battery to the mat here. It's kind of like non-conventional or unconventional, but as you can see, it fits really nice. Now that makes the drone look a little bit cleaner and kind of reduces the overall weight of the drone by having this elastic strap on here. And as you can see, everything is pretty simple. You just plug it in and you're good to go. Now the second thing is, well, the actual XT30 connector on here. Now we've seen a lot of drones on the market go to this kind of setup right here, which is integrated into the frame. And although it looks really clean and nice and kind of keeps the wires out from the propellers, you're kind of limited by the dimensions in here. So if you have a larger battery, this one has a little bit smaller, and I say larger, not in capacity, that's a good point. Larger in just dimensions, then it's not gonna fit on here. So you can have technically a smaller capacity battery, but just bigger in length, and it just will not fit on your drone. Now this one here does fit, so that's not a really good example on here. Actually, this is a good example. I didn't realize it. So this is a good example. This one is actually smaller. This is a 650, and as you can see, the battery is actually blocking or touching the XT30 connector. So it's kind of weird that you have a smaller battery, but yet it can't fit on the drones. In my case here, I did have to just tilt this just a little bit to the side. That freed up some space, and then I can plug it in here. And that's something to be aware of. Make sure that your dimensions of the battery is perfect for this drone. Okay, so let's move on to RX link of the B25. Now my drone specifically has an Express LRS receiver with an external antenna on here. And Express LRS is pretty much the default for FPV. This thing does a really good job. At this point, you kind of know what to get with Express LRS. I never wanted to have any issue flying this drone. Never wanted to have a failsafe or kind of telemetry loss. It even got to the point where you saw I was flying this drone a lot over water. And I only do that if I'm comfortable with the link quality and the reception of my Express LRS receiver. Now SpeedyBee does offer this in Crossfire as well, and that's also a robust radio link as well. So I don't think you're gonna have any kind of failsafe with this drone. And that's something you really wanna have, especially if you're gonna fly through a house, chase your subjects, maybe in a bike or a car. You really don't wanna have a failsafe while filming. So the receiver on here is pretty good overall. Okay, finally let's talk about aesthetics and durability of this drone. Now, I didn't have the opportunity to actually crash this drone during my days of testing. You know, I get lucky once in a while. But yeah, this thing does have this kind of hardened injection molded plastic. And I don't know how well this is gonna hold up compared to some of the other drones that has like a squishy kind of duct on here. Only time will tell how much or how long this is gonna hold up. But for right now, it looks pretty good. Now, as far as the aesthetics on this drone, what more can I say? I do like the transparent kind of smoke color of the actual ducts. It looks really, really nice, guys. And then you have this modular camera design here with these clean antennas. The actual Express LRS antenna is integrated into the frame. You have this elastic battery strap, the integrated XT30, and this nice little GPS mount here. I mean, this looks like a really clean and modern drone, guys. I mean, you really can't fault this drone for the looks of it. And then you have this carbon fiber that's painted black, and then you just have the traditional SpeedyBee colors with the yellow and white. So this thing looks uniform. It looks not out of place. It looks like a professional drone, guys. I do really like the aesthetics of it. And then once you factor in, guys, the LED that's integrated into the ducts, it's pretty much a perfect drone, guys. SpeedyBee, I think in my opinion, one of the leaders as far as LEDs in the drone game here. Now this thing here isn't just for show. This thing is set up by default to actually show the status of the drone. Now, once you power this up, this thing goes into a white kind of color while the ESC and the flight control powers up or initializes, and then it goes to green once it's ready to go. So if you have your throttle at down, ready to arm, it goes to green. If the throttle isn't fully down or is partially up, it stays in red, saying that you can't arm it, which is pretty nice. And then once it fires up, it just goes to a multicolor rainbow color and looks spectacular. Now, in the event that you crash your drone or you lose radio link, then the LEDs come on and show bright white. So you can actually find your drone, guys, with the LEDs in conjunction with your beepers. So I do think that the default status of these lights are amazing, guys. It's truly impressive overall, guys. So as far as aesthetics on the B25, I think it's damn near perfect. So overall, what do I think about the SpeedyBee BE25? Well, I do think that this is a very capable cinewhoop that over-delivers on its promise with the battery life, the actual thrust, and capturing smooth cinematic 4K images. So if you want to do that both indoors and outdoors, this just might be the perfect drone for you. Now, if you need a larger drone, something to carry a more professional action camera like this right here, then you might need something like the BE35. Now, I've done a full review on this one showing you how to build one for yourself, and I'll leave that video linked right here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.